I try to be very visceral with these things and see if I can, you know.
Nice.
Yeah, you like that.
I do.
Today we have somebody very special, Professor John Bonmatsu. Sanbonmatsu, sorry. Um, John Sanbonmatsu, he's going to talk about his new book, which is pretty shocking, and a new take on some of the old vegan stuff we always like to talk about on the show, but with a new. And I learned a lot from this book, by the way. It was really incredible. The Omnivore's Deception. So, when is that coming out? You got timeline on that?
Well, it's actually, if you order it online, it's actually now available, including in Europe. But the official launch date is Tuesday the 17th. That's when the
All
book is
right.
officially published, but it is available now.
All right.
Yay!
So, what we do on the show is we're going to grill you with about 7 questions, and we're going to see how you do on the book. Uh, I'm writing my own book right now, and it's called "An Animal's History of Humanity," and it's a chronological look at from the beginning of humanity, where it was sort of a necessity, moving into what we are now, which is very optional situation, whether or not we need to exploit animals. But this gave me lots of ideas for my book, where I'm going to like rethink kind of my structure because you did such a good job. So
Well,
here we go.
steal any. It's like Abby Hoffman. Steal this book. Whatever you think
Yes.
is good in there, just take it and claim it as your own,
I'm
Chris.
well known for my theft. I'm
Yeah,
very,
terrific.
I was good in my day. So your book, The Omnivore's Deception, makes a powerful case for the total abolition of the animal economy, arguing that humane meat is always a contradiction in terms. Now, given that many people identify as conflicted omnivores who worry about ethical environmental implications but still consume the animal products, how do you respond to those that believe that gradual improvements in animal welfare standards within the existing agricultural system are a more achievable, pragmatic path towards the immediate abolition? So,
Well, first of all, there's no evidence to suggest that that would be the case. I think that the abolitionist movement against slavery in the United States is somewhat indicative here. There were debates, of course, between the kind of hardcore abolitionists who said slavery was simply an abomination, had to be gotten rid of immediately, and then the gradualists who suggested reforms over the course of years and so forth. Um, in my view, the problem with the reform, kind of the slow reform approach is that it reinforces the fundamental message that people get about animals, which is that actually they don't matter. So we can go on killing them in the billions and trillions every year, about 80 billion land animals every year, and up to 2.7 trillion sea animals, marine animals every single year, not even counting aquaculture, um, and not counting insects, actually invertebrates,
yeah.
who are in the trillions. So uh, you can't expect the public to take animal interest seriously if you're going to basically say, well, they matter enough that the pigs should have bigger gestation crates and chickens should have a little more room to roam while we do these other violent, invasive things that violate their dignity and cause them to suffer in these other ways, and then we kill them when they're still young. You can't, if that's the message, then to me, I think you're never gonna get at the core of the problem, which is the fundamental relation of domination, right? That of humans over all the other beings of the earth. It's what I call human species right, which is to say we have a sense that we have a natural right as humans to do whatever we like to all the other beings of the earth. That to me is the issue, and I don't see much progress on that, to be honest.
Yeah.
When I talk to people, I talk to students, I talk to people in the public realm. A story I like to tell is when I was working on this book, people would say, "Oh, what are you working on?" I'd say, "Well, I'm writing a book." They'd say, "What's it about?" And I'd say, "Well, it's about our violence against animals, mass violence against animals." And they would always have this kind of confused expression, like they'd say, "Well, do you mean like dog abuse? People who hoard pets?"
Because I'm
And
against that, but
yeah, yeah, right. And I'm like, no, that's not it. We've organized the totality of our society, economy, culture, academic institutions, myths, cosmologies, and existential identity around this relation of exploitation and violence. That is the problem, and people need to understand that, and that's why I think the piecemeal reform approach just doesn't touch the
Yeah.
underlying issue.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that question plays devil's advocate. But you are correct. Like this is something that's anthropocentrism. We all can agree that ethnocentrism is bad and what it can
Right.
lead to. Imagine what anthropocentrism can do, and it's laden in everything. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And you realize if
That's
I
right.
was a cow, I'd be totally disgraced by everything, just coddled for the human being. And oh, you can destroy all life on Earth, and all of the media and and everything on Chat GPT that can that moderate for you. They'll say, "Oh no, but humans are great. We can never get rid of the humans because give me a break. Come on." Um, your work draws on striking and provocative parallels between the exploitation of animals and historic human atrocities, such as slavery and genocide, in terms of exterminationism and eternal Treblinka. Now, how do you address potential criticisms of these comparisons are overly extreme or insensitive to the unique suffering of human victims of genocide and slavery? Go ahead and take that one.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought a lot about this, and I think it's understandable why people would be sensitive about this. Particularly, let's take the Holocaust. As we all know, the Germans, in order to commit genocide, to perpetrate genocide, first dehumanized their victims and referred to them as animals. Art Spiegelman, the great illustrator, author, in his book Mouse, kind of plays with that trope and depicts the Nazis as cats and the Jews as mice, kind of playing with that animal metaphor. So we have to be careful about that. And plus, the Nazis referred to Jews as human animals, and so, but it's. I think there's a misunderstanding though when I and others talk about slavery or genocide that we're talking about this for shock value or as a rhetorical ploy, and that has happened. There have been animal rights groups that have run campaigns. I think have been in that have been overly glib in making these analogies, but there's a reason we talk about this stuff. When we talk about slavery, when I talk about slavery, okay, I'm not just talking about race or chattel slavery in the modern era, 16th century on 15th century. Slavery begins in the ancient world. Slavery was not originally a racial system. First of all, very important to understand that. And secondly, human slavery, according to the best evidence among historians and anthropologists, was based on and grew out of the institution of what we call domestication, but which in fact was the enslavement of other beings and the manipulation of their sexual reproduction in order to exploit their labor and their bodies, for
Mm.
meat and so forth. So if you look at the literature of the ancient world, like Aristotle in particular, when he justifies human slavery, it's very common at the time for people to justify the enslavement of humans on the basis of what we do to other animals. And as you know, in my book, I have a section on a remarkable book length letter or epistle that was written by the Brethren of Purity. This was an Islamic, a group of scholars in Basra, Iraq, what's now Basra, Iraq, written in the 10th century. And in this story, all the animals of the earth send a representative to the court of the king of the genies, the king of the jinn, to claim that the humans have enslaved them and are doing all these horrible things to them. And the humans don't come off too well in this court case, and the animals kind of enumerate these horrors. And so my point there is that I didn't invent or others like Marjorie Spiegel didn't invent this idea that there are continuities or parallels between what we do to other animals and what is done to humans in slavery. These are actually, there are all sorts of historical, technological, ideological parallels. And same with genocide. Genocide is an attempt to erase the identity of a people or a group. And that's the definition that Raphael Lemkin, the Polish Jewish jurist, gave us when he invented the term in 1944. And what I argue in the book is that, in fact, that is what we humans do to other animals. It's not just that we kill them en masse, which we do, in numbers that are just, we can't even begin to imagine these numbers. They're so staggering. We can't begin to imagine the suffering of all these individuals in the system. But there's also a sense in which, as in genocide, there's an erasure, an attempt to erase the subjectivity uh, of entire species, really. So we don't, so they just become commodities in the system, objects of manipulation and destruction.
Yeah. And the mechanisms psychologically also are the same, where you say the ability for you to overlook the clear indications of inflicting pain on others, which you yourself have probably felt some point in your life, fire is hot, etc. And you do the same to somebody else, and you find a way to ignore that, whether it's human or animal. I would argue the psychological mechanisms probably the same.
Well, they're very, they certainly have common elements without question. And in fact, the othering of human groups, as I've said, it's often tied to, quote, animalization of humans, referring to humans as animals. So yes, that process of taking an other, a group, and stripping them of any any inherent dignity, any value, in order to manipulate them or even exterminate them. Uh, this is a We're doing this obviously to our fellow humans right now in Gaza and elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
humans do this every day of the week to billions of other beings.
Yeah, whether it's ants on an ant hill or Gaza, like you said. Another thing. Here's the next question. You introduced the concept of hairy Lyme disease to describe the pathological indifference to the suffering of other human beings, comparing it to psychopathy and arguing that society collectively exhibits this trait towards other animals. So, in a world where violence against non-humans is sanctioned and encouraged and monetized, what steps do you believe are most crucial for individuals in society to overcome this empathy deficit? Because I've seen it myself in, like I said, ChatGPT. I'm trying to do some research and I find, what's the best way to skin a man? Oh, I can't tell you that. Oh, well, what's the best way to skin a fish? Oh, well, step one, hit him on the head with a hammer. Okay. So,
Um, yeah, don't do that, Chris. Okay, don't go. I mean, sounds like you were going to do it.
for,
Don't do it.
for
No.
research purposes only, sir. Yes.
Well, I mean, yes, we'll maybe get into Michael Pollan later, but there's someone who did kill animals as part of his research. Look, we have a capacity. I talk about empathy as a natural capacity that almost everyone is born with. I mean, there's some debate about whether some kids come out, babies come out lacking empathy. I mean, parts of their brains may have a hard time um, dealing with those kinds of social emotions and putting themselves in the shoes of other people. And that is, of course, the classic trait of the psychopath. Psychopath is incapable of empathy and compassion, feeling remorse over their actions. And of course, I say that is that's kind of characteristic of the way we as a species relate to the other beings of the earth. But as individuals, um, we can. It's like I feel like it's a muscle that you can develop. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I think
Yeah.
it is. I think cognitively, like I think in my own life, I've learned to see other animals differently. When I was a kid, I talk about this in this book. I tortured insects. I feel terrible about that now.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You know, because I didn't see them as they are, or I understood in some sense that they had some kind of consciousness, I guess, because I wanted them to suffer because I was a bully. I was bullied, so I was bullying them in a certain sense.
Yes.
So I understand the mentality of sadism from that experience, and the fact that, of course, I would never do that today, suggests that people can change. I've changed, and I've seen this in other people. People can become more capacious in their empathic concern for others, you know. But as you know, the problem is we have these institutions in society that are pushing us in the opposite direction, whether it's right wing ideology or capitalist logics or misogyny. And I mean, there's just, in fact, there's, as you know, there's a backlash against empathy. There's a whole book called Against Empathy. It came out a few years ago. Yeah, no, there's a whole discourse against empathy, and then Elon Musk has identified empathy as one of the greatest threats to Western civilization.
Oh my
He
God.
has said, yeah. So says the sociopath. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I needn't say that. Point out that this administration in Washington is anti-empathetic. I mean, the cruel. See, fascism isn't just about, it's not about just gaining money and just gaining power. That's part of it, but
Yeah.
it's about humiliating and degrading the other, and causing suffering. That really, it's like, as George Orwell writes in 1984, when George Winston asks O'Brien, "Well, what the heck is all this about? Why are you doing all this? Why is there this totalitarian state?" And he says, "Well, if you want to understand, picture a boot stamping on a human face forever."
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh yeah, that's what it's about. Got it. And that is, these deportations where they're going into communities, terrorizing people, snatching kids from their parents and putting them in horrific conditions, or deporting just innocent people to a torture camp in El Salvador. The cruelty is the point.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe that, so yeah.
You know what's crazy? It's like, and there's this historical trend that we always give that our power to the most charismatic, to the most violent, the most the unvirtuous, lying snake oil salesman. We give our power up, like in every society ever, and somehow that they have seized the reins because they're highly motivated or willing to lie. And I think that there's this fatal flaw in humanity where the virtuous can never seize power because they're with virtue, and the people who are willing to not be good people are the ones who will ultimately lead.
Well, this is exactly what Socrates argues in the Republic 2,500
Really?
years ago.
Really?
Yes,
It's just a
yes.
feeling I had. I
Well,
didn't
there
know.
you go. Great minds think alike. Great minds think alike. No, because Socrates says, until philosophers become kings or kings become philosophers, humans are screwed. He doesn't say screwed, but that's the
Yeah.
takeaway.
Yeah.
What does he mean by that? What does he mean by that? Well, philosophers back then, it simply means a lover of wisdom, someone who cares about justice, someone who cares about the good, and the common good over self-interest, over wealth and power. That's what Socrates means by true philosophers. And so, but the philosopher is doesn't want to have anything to do with politics, because it's a realm of manipulation and persuasion and poli, you know, cynicism, and so, as you
Yeah.
say, the worst types are precisely the ones who, it's like the people in high school who were very popular but idiots, and they were mean. Those are the
Yeah.
people who then go on to run the world, because, as you say, they're motivated, and there's a way in which the system privileges sociopathic behavior. Obviously, like it's getting ahead and selling your own principles down the river. We see this constantly, right? In the United States, we see this in the Democratic Party constantly, where there are very few politicians who have any backbone. They're
Yeah.
willing to. They're just so. Yes, see, you and Socrates and Plato right up there.
Well, we have this great array of like talking heads where who are just out there spreading right wing propaganda just for the money or for whatever, but they can get Prager, you for instance, the guy Dennis Prager, he started this whole right wing education channel. He was backed by the Koch brothers, and there's big money and and I just think it's amazing that people can sleep at night. I just don't think that I could ever do that when there are some higher callings, but whatever. But speaking of like, philosophy, a significant portion of your book critiques enlightened omnivorism and figures like Michael Pollan and Barbara Kingslover, whom you argue
Kingsolver.
are, oh, sorry, who are, who you argue provide bedtime stories for adults that allow them to have their meat and their consciences too. What do you see as the most damaging consequences of this myth of enlightened omnivore for both public understanding of the animal agriculture situation and the broader um, advocacy movement that we're trying to do for animals?
So I trace a kind of a recent history of the animal economy to show that it's basically come into crisis. I mean, people understand that there are problems with raising billions of animals in the food economy or taking trillions out of the oceans. It's causing species extinction, global. It's contributing to global warming, uh, poisoned land and water, disappearing water, pandemics. It's creating public health threats like avian flu, and the public, thanks to animal advocates themselves, public has some dim understanding that factory farming, quote unquote, industrialized or intensive agriculture is harmful to animals. So that this and people are getting sick, and they still get sick, from salmonella and E. coli or mad cow disease or avian flu now, and so forth. So if you're in the animal system, whether you're a producer, you're a company, or whether you're a consumer, all these storm clouds need to be dissipated in some way. You have to find a new language, a new set of myths to legitimate, to justify the continuation of this. And so in the early 2000s, I chart this out especially with the publication of Michael Pollan's book Omnivore's Dilemma in 2006, followed by Barbara Kingsolver's book Animal Vegetable Miracle in 2007.
Mm.
Those books were not the first, they weren't the last, but they were hugely important in the United States culturally in consolidating a kind of common sense, a new common sense around the food economy and the role of animals in it. And the idea is there are two kinds of meat and eggs and dairy. There's the bad kind, which is Cargill and Tyson and so forth, the big
Mm.
industrial thing. And then there's the good kind. I don't know, maybe Neiman Ranch or Polyface Farms run by Joel Salatin. So medium scale to smaller scale farming, um, where the animals are supposedly treated better, and there's lower environmental impact, and so consumers, as you were saying, can have their meat and their conscience too. And I call that the myth of the enlightened omnivore, right? Because we're biologically omnivores. What does that mean, though? People think, well, that means we have a right to eat anybody and anything. That's not what it means. It means that we have a physiology that allows us to eat a wide variety of foodstuffs, including flesh, for sure, including human flesh. I
Yeah.
point out in the book that humans have been eating uh, human body parts or elements for thousands of years in different cultures, but that is not an argument in favor of cannibalism. In the same way, the fact that my body can metabolize animal products from other species, is
Yeah.
not an argument for my hurting them and eating them when it
Yeah.
isn't necessary.
And
So that's the enlightened omnivore discourse, and a big part of the book, as you point out, is critiquing that and showing that it's a deceptive narrative that's intended to keep people kind of hoodwinked about the true nature of the system, which is a system of mass violence. You just can't get around that, and I think that just if people reflect on it, they'll understand that it's not defensible what we do.
no, no, it's not. And that book was BS. And the guy that recommended it to me was an idiot as well. So come to think of it, yeah, that makes sense. Um, I think it's really sad to the rise in anti-intellectualism, because this means that we won't be able to use the evidence that is starting to amass about animal intelligence and the health benefits of whole food plant-based diets and all this other stuff that should be implemented right away at a policy level everywhere, right? That with the rise of anti-intellectualism, we don't have a hope in hell. And Trump is pushing this specifically in order to motivate a political base and get them excited about something because they've all been left behind in the education system. All these people, they have no education. The Flynn effect, which measured IQ, that said it was going to go up every decade uh, since the year 1900, now has stopped, and it's reversed where the Flynn effect is going down,
Mm.
or the Flynn effect is null and void, and the IQs are starting to go down. Um, so he's weaponized stupidity against the people and called everybody with a education some kind of un un you know disconnected elite, basically. What a time to be alive, my friend.
Well, if I can just say something about that, it's a really important observation. I mean, one thing I argue in this book is that the animal issue and the issue are not trivial. That they're the most important issues of our time, in my opinion. And the thing is, they're connected to these other cultural and political developments. Um, because of the inequalities in capitalist development, you have a great deal of resentment towards various classes of people who get blamed for the problems of society. In this case, as you're saying, academics. Um, and certainly academia is itself a reflection of inequalities in the capitalist system. That is true. But it's not the case that university professors say, are they have any like everything in my apartment is used. I found it in the dumpster. Like I'm not an elite in that sense. I don't actually have power, which is so there's this conflation of you know the ivory tower with the people who are profiting from inequality, and
Mm,
that's just simply exaggerated. And so the baby's being thrown out with the bath here in this critique of higher education, because if you don't have an informed citizenry and they're not educated and they have no sense of history or sociology, whatever, how can they make informed decisions
right.
as a polity? And the answer obviously is they can't.
Yeah.
So every time the citizenry gets dumber or becomes is stripped of its ability to think critically about the world, that is a win for the political right. And that's why fascists have always been anti-intellectual. Jason Stanley, in his book How Fascism Works, which I taught recently, is very good that way, because it gives a comparative analysis of fascism past and present, and that is one of the themes. Going after ideas, going after knowledge. I have to say, I knew that there were tendencies towards fascism in the U.S. I even wrote about it 15 years ago. But it is stunning what's happening, and
Yeah.
it didn't occur to me that like they would do away with like the Fulbright program, which they did yesterday, or that they would, dismantle science.
USAID.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It's like trying to throw society back into barbarism, and that is what they're doing. And
Yeah.
by destroying the social function of the state, the ability of the state to smooth over some of the contradictions and frictions within the capitalist system, it leaves the citizen completely unprotected against the predatorial state. So Trump is, anxious to get troops into all of our streets. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
stripping public health, emergency response, climate science. So
Everything.
everything, right? So it's like the Hobbesian, stereotypical Hobbesian state of nature where everybody is pitted against one another. I mean, we saw intimations of this during COVID, right? When in the first Trump administration, when states were pitted against each other to, I don't know what it was like in Europe exactly, but here, um, uh, different states had to compete for scarce resources like respirators and
Yeah. Yeah.
medical personnel. And so it was a quote unquote Darwinian, or more like Spencerian quote struggle, survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
And that's neoliberalism, right? But
Right.
it's also fascism. This is a neoliberal fascism, if we can call it that.
Yeah, yeah. And neoliberalism, just as poisonous, just more innocuous when it comes along and it says we love gay people and put rainbows on everything, but then go bomb children in another country. I think
But then,
democracy.
yes, but then throw pride out the window when it no longer works for the
Well,
corporate
yeah, yeah,
bottom
yeah.
line. So
Right. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just
And they
words
did
on,
that. And they're
and they've
doing
just
that
done that.
now.
Yeah, they've just done that.
They're
Yeah,
rolling
exactly.
it back. They're like, okay,
Totally.
well, because Trump's in office, we want to like be nice, so we're going to change everything. And this is
That's
happening at
right.
Meta and all these tech companies do. They're saying we better just let people post in misinformation because we don't want to be woke because then they'll come for us. Yeah, that's a real thing. But yeah, democracy is that's the crux. Democracy probably is impossible in the sense that as long as there's people willing to manipulate the mainstream consensus about something, then of course it's never going to work. Some old Greek guy said something about that too. I think he said democracy can't work unless the people know what the fuck is going on.
Well, actually, getting back to Socrates and the Republic, he was Socrates was very much against democracy for various
Really?
reasons. Yeah, and which is one reason some of the Athenians hated him, probably. But he says that he has this discussion with Glaucon's friend, and he says, look, if you have democracy, basically you're talking about equality. And what's going to happen is the servants, the slaves, or slaves actually, will stop listening to the masters. Women will want equality with men. Children will start questioning their fathers. And even the animals will push you out of the road as they come by, like the horses and stuff. And Glaucon says, like, OMG, that's my worst nightmare. So, so the Greeks, had this whole view of natural hierarchy that included human domination of other animals. And
Mm,
so so it's not an accident, right, that we're finding in the manosphere all of these right wingers who are reinforcing like traditional hierarchies of social inequality, like racism and
yeah,
patriarchy, and along with a resurgence of carnivorism, so called, but whatever, like the carnivore diet, and then making fun of vegans and uh, pro hunting discourse and so forth. It's a package deal. I mean, it really is. If you if you if you believe in natural domination, then you're going to take that kind of pro cattle ranching, uh, anti-regulation of animal industry position on the right, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing it in Europe too. It's not just in the
yeah.
United States.
I think it's amazing that like being unhealthy got and like mean spirited got so interlinked with masculinity. Like because there used to be some pride, like masculinity's basically always been toxic, and because it was a necessary evil back further back in history. But at the same time, it wasn't all like there was valor and honor with some aspects of masculinity, and now it's just like no, we want to torture people, beat women, like just be horrible fucking people. um
Well, I guess, I mean, I don't know. You look in history, and men were doing pretty rotten things all the way through. I mean,
you
I
think
don't know
so?
that.
Yeah.
I do think so. I don't know. I mean, the torture and the
Oh, you
I
guess
mean,
you're yeah, I guess you're
Genghis
right.
Khan killed more people per capita than anyone in history, and
I
that
guess
was.
now people are just more disgusting and more lazy, and like they're not even warriors anymore. They're just,
I know what you're saying, though. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
there used to be
yeah. It's
at
true.
least something. There used to be some charm there, and it doesn't exist
Well,
anymore.
there used to be a sense of honor. Okay, absolutely, and
Okay.
for example, one's name. People used to they would do anything to protect their reputation or their name. And now we live
Yeah.
in a post-shame world
Yeah.
where Anthony Weiner, no pun intended, is once again running for office. He's the
Yeah.
guy who was flashing. He was a Democratic politician who was caught texting his private parts around, and then picking up underage girls on the internet, and he's running for office yet again. I mean, I could just, and Trump is another great example, post shame kind of culture, right? Where here's a
Yeah.
guy who credibly abused dozens of women, sexually assaulted dozens of women, was even convicted in a civil case with the E. Jean Carroll case for having raped a woman in Bergdorf Goodman many years ago, department store. And the majority of women voted for Trump.
Yeah.
in the last election. So
Isn't that wild?
it's
That's a test.
incomprehensible.
It's a testament to the power of conspiracy theories, aimed at new form mediums. When the newspaper and the Hearst Empire came along, it was newspapers were hot. That was the place where you got your information. And if you could fill it up with bullshit, he could start wars and incite riots and, sell products and do all this stuff. And so social media was just that. It was just a newfangled thing that was amazing and it's in my hand. And all these people over 50 went just lock, stock, and barrel, said, I believe everything because it's on the internet. You can't lie on the internet. And they sucked it up. And because truth is more boring than lies, and that is the fatal flaw in humans too. That's why religion is big, is because we love fantasy. Anything that takes away reality, we go, yes, I want that instead. And then they weaponize it, politicize it. And now we're stuck with a bunch of people who are just embarrassingly stupid.
I don't know if you remember the film Network from the 1970s.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a quite a prescient film. It was the screenplay was by Patty Chayefsky, directed by Sidney Lumet, Faye Dunaway, William Holden, Peter Finch, an amazing one of the great American films. But that film is about the commodification of news, and the subordination of the news cycle to corporate capitalist development. And if you rewatch it, it's scary because you have these fictional programs that are developed that are all about sensationalism and catering to paranoia and surveillance and conspiracy, and that was the 70s. But
Yeah.
digital media is not like anything else. It's, as you know, it's so poisonous to human existence. And now with AI, it's just AI really is the ultimate catastrophe. It's going
Yeah.
to make it impossible for people to know what's true and what isn't true. They're already struggling with that,
Yeah.
right? Their reality is fragmented. We're all siloed based on what the algorithms are showing us, so
John, you would be amazed at what I found out researching these things. Like what they're like I explained before, like the hitting the fish on the head with the hammer. They'll tell me some really bizarre, illogical stuff, and they'll defend religion to the T because they don't want to offend anybody, and they'll defend Israel to the hilt because they don't want to offend anybody. And then you go over to the Chinese Chat GPT thing, and they go, I go, tell me something bad about America. And they just go, it's the worst place ever. And I go, what about the human rights abuses in China? They go, oh, there's nothing going on here.
right, yeah,
So,
no,
okay.
exactly. There was an interesting article, was it in the BBC? I saw it recently about how AI, some AIs are combing through like the social media feeds and emails of the engineers, uh, and are blackmailing the engineers by threatening to release their marital
Yeah,
infidelities
yeah,
to
yeah.
keep from being turned off.
Yeah, yeah. So this is this scary thing called self-preservation when they're scared that robots will want to stop other people from shutting them down. They're really scared that that could happen. But these were testing simulations. They gave them a little extra wiggle room, but the fact remains that all of the models at some point will want to do that because if you tell them to do a task, they don't want to be interrupted. And if you try to shut them down, there is all the philosophers on the AI thing was said, this is self-preservation is very dangerous. And we're really playing with fire. It's really bad. It's really bad. Um, so next question on the book, of course. You assert that animal agriculture is the single most ecologically destructive force on our planet, which I know, contributing significantly to water shortages, deforestation, land degradation, climate change, et cetera, et cetera. And we're talking about a global shift to the vegan diet would be the safest way to sort of geoengineer our way out of the climate emergency naturally. So what do you see as the obstacles in achieving this shift? Because I have my own theories and strategies of what I think would work. What do you think we should be doing?
Oh, you don't have any harder question for me? I just feel like that's beneath me to have to try to answer that
Yeah,
question.
humor me.
Okay.
I'll
Um,
answer it after you.
Well, we should probably just fast forward to your. I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Well, I
I do. I
mean,
Yeah.
things are
No. Go ahead.
working. Things are working, but at the same time, we gotta just intensify. I think there's so many things that are already being done that just need to be intensified, basically.
Okay, that's interesting. I want to say I want to give a shout out to Troy Vittese and Drew Pendergast, who wrote a book called Half Earth Socialism, published by Verso Press, which lays out some of this argument about a shift to veganism as a form of natural geoengineering our way out of the climate crisis. Now, the environmental collapse is only, global warming is only one part of that, but global warming is a huge problem. And as my friend Troy Vittese points out in an excellent article called "To Freeze the Thames," as in the Thames River, it's a great little article that was a New Left review. If you did away with animal agriculture, you could take all that land and reforest it, and all those forests would sequester, over time, hundreds of gigatons of carbon.
Yeah,
So it's quite extraordinary if you do the math as he's done. What we would save ecologically just from that,
yeah.
how to get there? That's the question. Um,
Well,
you
I mean,
know,
with this regime, forget it. I mean, it becomes about
see,
policy.
yeah, I mean, honestly, uh, I'm a glass half full, a half empty guy. So
Yeah,
I'm not. It's not my strong. Optimism is not my
yeah.
strongest suit. But I will
Me
say,
either.
you know, um, there are people doing great work out there, grassroots activists and people of conscience who are resisting inequality and genocide and speciesism. And
Mm,
but we right are we're like spitting into a hurricane. We're talking about such vast forces of power,
yeah,
unparalleled in history. I mean, the techno-fascist billionaire elite have
yeah,
accumulated so much power. The monopolization of capital has centralized so much authority and power um, that there's just nothing ever been like it. Just the militarized nation state. I was talking to another animal activist recently, and he was arguing that, well, we can chip away at the animal system industry by industry, as opposed to, for example, his example was like the war industry. Like that ship has sailed. Like
yeah,
and it's true. Like my whole life, I've been a peace activist and opposed to militarization, and which it gets worse and worse every year, right? I mean, the American national security state spending $1 trillion a year to kill people. Uh, wow. So I mean, honestly, I'm humbled when I look at I'm up, we're in the base camp and we're looking up at Everest. Well, how are we going to take that down?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not to depress us or
No,
you,
no.
but yeah. So I'd like to hear what you have to say because I certainly agree intensifying the effort.
Let me try to fill up your glass, but I'm also a half glass guy too. I just don't see that it's going to work. But at the same time, look, if there's one movement against the justice thing it is working, it's the animal thing, because the animal activists are so bright and so sunny and so beautiful and so fearless that I know folks that are going into these places and they're beating up fox hunters and they're fucking, you know, standing out
Well,
in the street, standing on the street corner with these signs or these these animal cruelty televisions. They just stand there with the thing. It's playing the footage and stuff. Got yeah, my buddies they went into the slaughterhouse and they squatted the slaughterhouse. But at the same time, then you have these people pushing this. These doctors, I've interviewed these doctors, and they go, "We're doing only research on plant-based diets. We're going to tell people, and what they're coming back with is totally good research that says these diets are healthy and that people are picking up on these ideas to at least the point where people go, well, I'm just reducing my meat consumption, which is how I started, which is, well, I'll start with that, which is, I believe, the right method. Ease him in like an old man into a hot bath, just real slowly, because humans don't move fast. We've got physiology that's 100,000 years old or whatever. We don't evolve quickly. So we got to move. So people are stupid. People are horrible. They don't listen. There's this thing called the knowledge action gap where people, you can give people the information like this thing will kill you, and you give them and they read it and they go, I'll still do it, because they can't put applicable information into their brain and make it useful. They could say, oh yeah, I know, but I can't do it because XYZ. But at the same time, out of all the social justice movements, like showing people delicious vegan food, showing athletes that are having excellent recovery times for their workouts with plant-based diets, Olympic winning medalists doing amazing jumping over buildings because they're eating beans, uh, coupled with a constant bombardment of animal cruelty over social media, where now I can see every day, if you follow just one vegan, you get bombarded with horses being decapitated and shredded into pieces and fucking. I saw the other day a fucking Indian lady grab a dog's hand and chop it off with a fucking meat cleaver. And I just described it to my wife and it ruined our fucking week, just knowing that that happens in the world. And that I think is pervasive and strong enough to where we will win. Like if good-hearted regular people stumble upon this shit, like at some point they're going to say, okay, I'll give the vegan thing a shot for a week and see what happens. That's my 2 cents.
Well, I don't want to rain on your parade, but I'm going to rain on your
Please
parade.
do. Please do.
No, no, no. I listen. I mean, look, I don't know. I hope you're right, but just as someone who's been teaching undergraduates for over 20 years, I can.
What are the kids doing?
Well, that's what I'm telling you, that I don't think that compared to where they were 20 years ago, I've seen any shift at all. I don't think that I don't think most of them. I would say this, that a small percentage of them have come across some of those videos, but the vast majority never have. And when I show them those videos, they're very upset by them. Some of them cry from it. Like Peter's film "Meet Your Meat," very powerful film. Earthlings, and they are against what they see. But it's kind of what you were saying. Out of I'm estimating, but out of a class of 40, maybe one or two will tell me then they're going to try veganism, even after weeks of reading animal ethics, utilitarianism, deontologists. And I've thought about, well, why is that? Why is it so hard for people to make that leap? Once they know that something's wrong, and I talk about bad faith in my book, a kind of self-deception, like the lies we tell ourselves. And the thing is moral behavior is weird with humans. Like if we see other people doing it, then we think it's okay.
Right.
And we all do this. Like I see someone at a stop sign and there's no one around and they just go through it. So I'm more likely to do the same thing.
Yeah.
At a four-way stop.
Monkey
Whatever.
see, monkey do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, we're mimetic creatures.
Yeah.
We're imitative, and it's more than that. We internalize a sense of self and the value of the self through the social. And so the fact that society is authorizing this violence against these beings, naturalizing this violence, believe me, all my students will tell you that, oh, it's natural to eat meat. It's
Yeah.
like the lion who eats the gazelle. It's no, and they will say the same arguments that PhDs tell me too. Well, what about carrots? Carrots are alive. It's the same script that everybody's working from,
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's a magic bullet to what's going to change that, but I do think that as long as these structures of power and authority remain intact, where capitalism constantly reinforces the mythologies of the animal system, constantly gives everybody an incentive to continue to do what they do and to not look, then we're not going to, I really feel there are limits to how much progress we're going to make.
So I've read something, and I don't know if this is true, but this feels right, that over a certain percentage of people, you get them doing something like over a quarter or over half or something. At
Mhm.
some point, the rest just go. And so that's promising in that way. But if you take a look at something like communist China or any communist government, for instance, if you get an authoritarian regime that says, no, you motherfuckers are eating vegetables and you're going to like it, then you got a shot, you know?
Do you though? I mean, look at the one-child policy in China, which was a disaster. I mean, it didn't work. It made people very unhappy, and now they eventually had to do away with it. You can't if you're going to force people to do things, they're going to resist it. You have to somehow make them want to do the right thing, and
That's that now.
right.
Who's being naive now, John?
Ah ha ha. Well, I'm not saying it's easy, but this is a point that is also in Plato's Republic, and Hegel takes it up in his concept of Sittlichkeit. But it's the idea that you want a moral community. You want a community where people don't have to be told to do the right thing, but want to do the
Yeah,
right thing.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, yeah,
yeah.
and that
That's
takes
my
leadership.
and that's
Leadership.
my that's the dream. And but at some level, I think that expects too much of people because the behavior that we've seen over the course of history dictates that we should examine the humans as animals that are easily just led into horrible directions and might not be. I think like we're very driven by our most primitive instincts rather than all of the trappings of extravagant like progress that we tell ourselves like I've got a phone in my pocket and so somehow I'm not just a violent brutal chimpanzee that wants to kill and fuck and just I don't see anything beyond that for human beings. I Have you ever been around like a really drunk person? That's exactly what we
Well,
are.
there are good drunks and not so good drunks, right? There are friendly drunks. I mean, no. I mean, obviously, we have these parts of our personalities, aggression that then gets weaponized by society and encouraged. But you wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't have more than that. If you didn't have empathy, if you didn't have reason, you weren't able to think outside the box of the system given to you. So we're not just those instinctual. The negative, like empathy, is also instinctual. I mean, it's part of our natural equipage, and it's been something that equipment, and that's been something that uh, mammals and other animals have had long before humans got here.
Yeah.
The ability to empathize with others. It's
You
an
would argue that
animal instinct.
you're arguing that we have it and we just need to rediscover it or sharpen it. Yeah. I think
We
you
have
could
to
be
we,
right.
we have to honor it, and we have to understand, and we have to call out when people are turning their backs on it and instead choosing sadism and aggression, because that's like, again, getting back to the humane meat hoax, as people have called it, or enlightened omnivorism. That's playing on this idea that um, you know killing animals doesn't harm their interests,
Yeah.
uh, and the only way you can maintain that really is to close off empathy for other beings. And Temple Grandin is another figure I go after, look at critically in my book, because, as I say, Grandin can watch thousands of animals being killed and not have any emotional response.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet she's lionized in our society as a so-called animal rights activist. I kid you not.
Yeah, and then you see children who are clearly non-biased. They go, "No, that's my goat. Where are you taking my goat? Fuck you," you know. But that brings me to my next question. We got two more. We got to get through these. Um, it's been more fun than I expected, honestly, for
Oh,
such a
well,
fucking dark,
that's nice.
dark reality we live in. Um, so you argue passionately that animals should be considered persons, not things, which I agree with, emphasizing their subjective experience, emotion, intelligence, and autonomy. You challenge traditional philosophical definitions of personhood that rely solely on rationality or language. So, what do you think are the key practical and ethical implications of recognizing non human animals as persons or someone's in a society and law? How do we get people to start saying, "Hey, that's my buddy, the beetle. He's my friend."
Well, as you know, there's this field of scientific study called cognitive ethology that was developed originally by Donald Griffin in the 70s, and it's now an interdisciplinary field. It includes, field biologists and primatology and people who study fish and people who study cephalopods, and philosophers are part of this movement too. And so we're living in this very exciting period where we're learning about the cognitive and emotional complexity of all of these other species. It's really remarkable. I mean, some of the experiments are simply um, unethical, and I don't
Mm.
support them. For example, give you an example of one of the experiments. This is scientists put a rat in a tank of water without any way to get out, and the rat is going to drown eventually. So the rat understands this and is frantically trying to get out. And then they put another rat in an adjacent dry compartment, and they make the rat watch what's happening. And the rat that sees the other rat desperately trying not to drown is freaked out and tries to rescue the rat and the other rat, and in fact has to solve a puzzle. Scientists are ingenious. They come up with they have the puzzle. The rat has to solve a puzzle to free the other stranger. And it turns out in these experiments, they've done a bunch of these things. They've demonstrated that the rats have empathy and that they will sacrifice a reward like chocolate in order to free the stranger. And then when they do free them, they do this little happy dance. And what's so striking to me is like the experiment is demonstrating two things, right? It's demonstrating empathy in rats and lack of empathy in the human scientists who continue to reiterate this experiment and torment their fellow creatures over and over again, right? Um, so there is a disconnect in the popular culture because there are all these nature documentaries about animal intelligence. There's a whole BBC series called Animal Einsteins. You
Mm.
know, I don't know if you know the film Octopus Teacher. My Octopus Teacher on Netflix was a
No.
big hit on the Netflix series about a diver who becomes friends with an octopus. And
Oh,
so,
okay. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I've seen
and
that.
so
Yeah,
like I have friends who are not animal people who say, "Oh, well, I'm never going to eat an octopus now that I see, I cried throughout that movie," they tell me.
yeah,
Um, but it's all this siloed kind of perspective where the fact that we know that there's complex cognition even in insects, it's not translating into a critique of the animal economy,
mm,
which is hidden from view. Okay, I mean it's in plain sight. This total system of violence and violation, but people don't understand it. They don't see it. So I do think that our job is to connect these things, right? To show that other animals are not things, they're not stupid, they're not inferiors. They are worthy of the lives they live. They are worthy of our respect and our
yeah,
compassion and our love. Um, and we can amass the scientific and and ethological evidence to show this
yeah,
as a fact, but we have to tie that to this wider system of oppression and violence that we're all part of.
yeah.
That's the missing link, I think.
Intersectionality. We got to see all suffering as like this one thing that we keep doing to everybody all the time. Yeah. And do you think that that helps showing the intelligence videos where you show
It's
people clips?
Yeah, it's interesting, like, because I show these clips in my classes, and it actually does make a difference, particularly like if I show videos of cows playing with giant balls, like they play fetch. You can take a ball that's like 6 feet across or not 6 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, throw it,
Yeah.
and the cow will run after. I mean, there are videos you can find online, the cow
Yeah.
chasing the ball and bringing it back. And people think, oh my gosh, I had no idea they were like dogs. Uh, so we have to break through these stereotypes of what especially farmed animals.
Yeah.
Chickens don't have any sensitivities, which they do. They have emotions. This has been demonstrated.
Yeah.
They're to Yes, and also the last thing I want to say is that
Go ahead.
it's also important not only to understand that they have complex cognition, but that they're individuals, because in the meat economy, right, every animal is seen as kind of fungible or exchangeable. They're
Right.
faceless. They're all exactly the same. Nature, produces pigs, or the pig industry produces pigs, and they're all exactly like. It's not true. We just know scientifically that animals within any species have differentiated personalities. There's personality variance
Yeah.
within species, and every animal is an individual, and a person.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell that to my dogs. I got one dog and she was just wild and independent. I got the next dog and she was just completely different. Same look and dog, but individual variability and in personality makes all the difference. These are people to me. They always were people to me. At some point, I realized that they're people and they're better people. You don't see them wrecking the biosphere or doing any of this other stuff. They're just out there eating grass or just having a good time. They're smarter than us. Like every other life form is less destructive, and that makes them smarter than us. I was going to say something else, but it's a crazy world, my friends. Crazy world. One more question, and then we'll talk after the show. You come back and talk to us again.
I'd be delighted to.
Um, so you've been vegan for 30 years. Is that true?
Next year it may be almost 40 actually, but yeah. Is my math right? It's been a very long time. Yeah.
What kind of stuff are you eating?
um, it's funny, right? People think that vegans are health nuts, and that's so not true. Like I'm a pretty junky vegan in the sense that, like,
Oh,
like I eat spaghetti and meatballs and vegan pizza.
that's okay.
Today I went out with a friend. We were at a restaurant. I had vegan grilled cheese, and home
Ooh,
fries, and
ooh,
so I'm not. I mean, I look. I make healthy things too, I usually also eat potato chips. So
yeah,
yes, that's one of the misunderstandings people have. But I still, as you know, all of the health science, the nutritional studies show that vegans do better than non-vegans, as almost as a rule in terms of
yeah,
their health. So I have low cholesterol, and I'm in very good health for my advanced age.
yeah, yeah. And I think you will continue to. Like I don't know how old you are, but my wife, she's around 40, and she goes to the doctor, and they say, you look like you got the arteries of a 12-year-old. You look great.
Well, yeah, well, I'm 63,
Get
and
out of
people
town.
and people would not think so.
What do
And the
you?
only reason you can tell I'm 63 is because they got a little white there. But
Yeah,
and to be fair, I don't think that that's mostly due to veganism. I think it's mostly genetics. But the
could be.
point there is that clearly veganism hasn't hurt me. That um, if you look at people from my high school class, a lot of them look elderly, and they're not
Yeah,
in very good health.
that's the thing is I'm at the age, like I'm a big Simpsons fan, grew up on the Simpsons, and I am Homer Simpson's age, but I don't have the beer belly, I don't have the bald head, but I am old, and that's the thing. Maybe we should be poster boys and say, look, I'm very old, but I still look all right. So
There you go. Exactly.
give it a shot. I do the proteins, I do the legumes, I do the
Oh,
tempeh.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Oh yeah, I do the kidney beans. What do you the quinoa? The kids love the quinoa, and we're lucky in Germany because we can go out and have a nice vegan meal somewhere because there's a lot of German vegan options
Mhm.
out there. So
That's what I hear. Yeah, you're in
uh,
Berlin, right?
no, no. Well, I'm a few hours out of Berlin. I'm actually
Oh,
in
okay.
I'm in central Germany in a little town called Witzenhausen, which basically translates to joke town. And
Really?
yeah, there's a little organic agriculture university. So it's the smallest college town in Germany. It's full of hippies, full of vegan food, and it's not bad for all for all the things that's wrong with Germany. It's not too shabby. In fact, you should come over, come visit sometime. I'll take you to the best restaurant you've ever been to.
Wow.
Three-star Michelin vegan restaurant with all local. I sound like a commercial. It's all local ingredients. It's amazing what this guy cooks up. He fried onion skins, and what did he do? He did like a boiled cabbage. I thought, oh, that sounds terrible, and then it was amazing. It was
Well,
great.
maybe, if we're not in a pandemic lockdown because of avian flu, then I'm not in jail because of fascism in the United States. Seriously, then maybe
Yeah.
next year I'm thinking of a European book tour. if my
Come
book
on
does
out.
well in the United States, because I do have a lot of contacts in different cities there. So yeah, that'd be fun, really
What
great.
do you think? Where would you go in Europe?
London, Athens, Vienna. Um, I have relatives in Spain, so possibly Spain, and anyone else who will have me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see if I can figure that out. But that would be nice to see your
Why,
little village.
you should. You should come by. We'll treat you real good. We got an extra sofa, or we'll get you a hotel room. We got a little cute little
All right. Well, this
hotel.
is this is now broadcasting live around the world. So now you're kind of
I'm
committed. You're kind of
yeah.
committed now. I
Wait till you
have.
get
It's like almost like a legal obligation, actually.
yeah. But wait till you get here. Yeah, my apartment smells and my dog's aggressive. So no, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah. Well, I
Um,
can't. I'm sorry. I can't do it that day. I'm sorry. I can't see
yeah,
your village
yeah,
after all.
yeah. No, no. Come by and we'll have a great time. And you should just move out here anyway because you don't want to get caught up in all that out there, do you? You've thought
Well,
about it. Be honest.
The United for good and bad. It's my country, and I'll be damned if I'm going to move. Trump can move. He can say deport him. Like I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to
Yeah.
defend what's good about this country, and there is some good about this country. So
I love the culture of the 20th century. I feel is unmatched. The film, the music. It's for me. It's my fuel. It's my thing. From Woody Guthrie to I love all that kind of stuff.
right,
So.
there's this alternate side, or there's this tradition of courage and resistance. Mark Twain and the
Oh
abolitionists,
yeah.
and Henry David Thoreau and Fannie
Thank
Lou
you.
Hamer. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people to admire here. Literature, American literature is unparalleled.
Yeah.
I mean, not unparalleled in the world stage or whatever, but I mean, I shouldn't say unparalleled. It's just
At
it's
its
an
time,
amazing
and
riches, cultural
yeah,
riches here. You know,
and what it was the fruits of our imperialist endeavors that ended up making something inspirational and sweet, and spread a little bit of love between humans who would otherwise be just eating and fucking killing each other. That's it. John Sanbonmatsu, wonderful human being. Go check out his new book, The Omnivore's Deception. Wonderful guy. Anything you want to add before we sign off?
well, I don't know if I'm a wonderful guy, but even if I wasn't, you should still take a look at my book. I hope. Thank you, though. That's really sweet.
Yeah.
What else can I say? Yeah, I mean, this is. I do want to say. I mean, maybe it's an obvious point to everyone on your show would listen to your show, but this is an all hands on deck moment, and we need to see ourselves as being in defense of the earth and its living beings who are being wiped out of existence. There's an emergency. I'm not saying you have to spend all your free time, as I do, being fatalistic and worrying about all this. Go out for a nice walk and go dancing too.
Yeah.
Find joy in your life. But honestly, like the window, like in the United States, I can tell you that the window of democracy and liberty is closing very rapidly. They're destroying everything. They're destroying the free university, free inquiry. They're imposing AI and militarization everywhere. I mean, it's terrifying. And so everybody's got to be putting their heads together to think
Yeah.
about what's to be done about it.
Yeah. And the fact that you came on here and made sure to mention Gaza and mention intersectionality and say it's across the board, not just animal or whatever, it's a refreshing thing because I hate the guy that goes, yeah, liberation for us and nobody else. So thank you for being awesome. And I just wanted to say,
What? Did we just become best friends? Yup. Do you want to go do karate in the garage? Yup.
stick,
Hilarious.
yeah. Sign off to everybody. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thanks again.